A VOR, or Very High Frequency Omnidirectional Radio Range Receiver, is still one of the most common means of navigation and is still used worldwide. Receivers are found in nearly every type of aircraft, from small training aircraft to airliners. In this presentation, we will look at information required by the Airman Certification Standards, different types of VORs, how they function, ranges, limitations, testing, and how to navigate using them. First, let's look at the different types of VOR stations and what the differences are. First, the basic VOR station is a VHF transmitter that produces courses or radials from the station in all directions, from 1 degree to 365 degrees. Reception is line of sight, and the range at 1,000 feet AGL is usually about 40 to 45 miles. Reception is also influenced by the type of VOR, with terminal, low altitude, and high altitude ranges. Terminal range is designed for reception at 25 nautical miles, low altitude at 40 nautical miles, and high altitude between 18,000 and 45,000 feet at up to 130 nautical miles. VOR DME stations have distance measuring equipment co-located at the station. Vortex stations also have distance measuring equipment and are co-located with military TCAN, or Tactical Air Navigation System, used by military aircraft. Many VORs can broadcast voice and can distribute weather information, such as hazardous weather advisories. Next, let's look at a basic VOR receiver. The display includes the course index at the top of the instrument, a course deviation needle, or CDI. The CDI shows the pilot how many degrees off course they are. Each dot represents a 2-degree deflection from the selected course. A to from flag shows the pilot which side of the selected radio they are flying. Finally, the OBS knob, which the pilot turns to obtain the desired radio. VOR checks are required every 30 days if the instrument is to be used for IFR flight. Checks include a dual VOR check with a 4-degree max deviation, a ground check with plus or minus 4 degrees deviation, VOT checks with a plus or minus 4-degree deviation if the airport has a VOT checkpoint, and air-based checkpoints using checkpoints which allow up to plus or minus 6 degrees. If your aircraft is equipped with a VOR receiver, knowledge of how to use it is required in the Commercial Airplane Airman Certification Standards. You will need to know how to identify, intercept, and track a course. When using a VOR, the information is only useful if you are sure you have tuned to the right station. To identify the station, listen to the station identifier Morse code through the nav radio. If you don't know Morse code, that's okay. The code for the station is listed on the chart next to the VOR name. Here we will show what intercepting a radio looks like. For this illustration, we will say ATC has instructed you to fly the 280 radio inbound from the Duluth VOR. The aircraft starts out south and to the east of the station with a right course deflection, indicating the station is to the right, and a to flag indicating the station is to the west. Watch as the aircraft flies to the northwest and intercepts the course. When navigating using VOR or Victor Airways, the tracks are based off VOR radials and are defined by the radials from the station. To intercept and fly the radial, for example, the OBS knob should be turned until the desired radial is on the top of the VOR indicator. The to from flag should then show a from indication, and the course deviation indicator will deflect in the direction the aircraft should be turned to intercept the course. You always want to set the OBS so it agrees with the direction you are flying. Basically, it will look like something like this. In a flight from the Ironwood VOR to the Duluth VOR, the OBS should be set to 280 degrees with a from flag. At the changeover point, you would tune in Duluth, turn the OBS to 095 degrees with a from flag. Identifying your position using VOR. If you know what radial you are on and are within range of another station, you can figure out your exact location by drawing a line from each VOR radial until they intersect. To find out what radial you are on from the station, tune the VOR receiver to the station frequency. Turn the OBS selector until the needle is centered with a from indication. So if we had a centered needle on 210 degrees with a from indication from the Ironwood VOR and a needle centered on 116 degrees from the Duluth VOR, we would be over the ERIYI intersection. In closing, some things to remember. It can be helpful when determining whether you should have a to or from flag to think of VOR radials as radiating from the station. VOR stations are limited by altitude and line of sight. A VOR check is required every 30 days if it will be used for IFR flight.